Good morning. So we're on Pirkei, chapter 4 of Pirkei Avot. If you have the Shabbos Sidur, it's page 248. If you have just any old copy of Ethics of the Fathers, we're at the beginning of chapter 4. So you'll remember there are 5 chapters, actually 6. A sixth one was added. We'll get to that. But for now, Pirkei. So we begin with Ben Zoma. And most of the people that we've brought have the title rabbi in front of them. But Ben Zoma, he doesn't even have a first name, and he certainly doesn't have a title. So that's a puzzle. And Zoma doesn't sound like a Hebrew name at all. Why wasn't he a rabbi? And if he wasn't, why is he included in this collection of rabbinic sage comments? Some people think it may be because he died early. Perhaps he was a contemporary of Rabbi Akiba. Perhaps he was one of the people who was executed, slaughtered, who died in the war in the year 132, the Bar Kokhba rebellion. That's one possibility. Why doesn't he even have a first name? Why is he simply Ben Zoma, son of Zoma? There are a number of Shimons. That was his first name, Shimon ben Zoma, and just giving that first name could have been confusing. So all the Shimons were differentiated by simply being called by their father's name, son of Zoma. Okay, this is a very famous Mishnah teaching. You've probably come across this. I'd like to look at it a little bit carefully today. Ben Zoma asks 4 questions. Ezehu Chacham, who is wise? Second question, Ezehu Gibor, who is strong? Third question, Ezehu Ashir, who is rich? Fourth question, Ezehu Mechubad, from the word kuved, who is honored. And the thing is that we think we know the answers. These are pretty obvious questions, and we think we know the answers. And what happens is Ben Zoma is going to give us answers we never considered, the opposite of what we thought. So what might we have thought? Who is a chacham? Who is wise? Well, in those days, it was probably somebody who was a great rabbi who you would look up to. Kids in school would figure, well, it's the smart kids. We know who they are. They get all A's, 4.0 on their transcript. Or somebody maybe who was capable of watching Jeopardy and knows all the right questions to for each and every category and each and every question. So he's going to tell us that's not necessarily the right answer. So here we have Ezehu Chacham, who is wise, and the answer is Halomed Mikol Adam, one who learns from every person. That's not what we would have thought. We would have thought a Chacham is one who has all the answers. The true answer is a Chacham, wise person, is somebody who is willing to learn from anybody in any circumstance. So here's an incredible thing. In the Talmud, and even in later Jewish life, we refer to yeshiva students or people who are in that world, we refer to them as a Talmid Chacham, right? A Talmud Chacham. Chacham, we know, means wise. Talmid actually means a student. So the best, Rebbe in the yeshiva would be known as he's a great Talmud Chacham, which doesn't mean he knows all the answers, but that he is a student of wisdom. He's willing to learn. So after they tell us, Ezehu Hacham Alomeid Mikol Adam, one who learns from, who's willing, who's able of learning from every person, Shene'emar, as it is said. Now we quote from the Bible. And he brings us a quote from the Psalms, Psalm number 119, verse 99. And it says here, the translation, from all my teachers have I gained understanding. Psalm 119, verse 99. So that seems to be a lovely proof text. The idea that if I can prove something by quoting a verse, that's better than anything. We've talked before about the different levels of authority. Highest level, it's written in the book. Second level is, I heard it from my teacher. The third level, which to us is the highest level, but in their world was the least level, was I figured it out. I came up with a great idea, right? So here we're being taught the idea that we've got a verse that proves his point, that it's not how much you know, it's about your willingness to learn. But we need to look at this verse for a second. It says, translation is, from all my teachers have I gained understanding. Mikol, from all, malamdai, a malamed, a teacher. From every one of my teachers, hiskalti, right? Seichel, from the word seichel, I became smart from all of my teachers. However, there's something deeper going on here. And if we actually look up the verse, one of the things that you learn when you study Mishnah and Talmud is that sometimes they will quote a verse. You'll just take it, okay, I'll take their word for it. I don't need to check it. But the truth of the matter is, you do need to check it. That in rabbinic literature, whenever there's a verse quoted, you really need to go back to the source. You really need to check what they're telling you and the context. Okay, so we go to Psalm number 119, and we read the following. This is what verse 99 says. Mikol melamdai hiskalti, exactly the quote that we have. But the way that the verse is translated, right, in the Bible is, I have gained more insight than all my teachers, for your decrees, God, are my study. So here's the interesting thing in the Hebrew. The Hebrew word min means from, and the contraction of min is me or may, right? Just a mem in front of. So here we have mi kol. Now, here's the interesting thing. In Hebrew, the me or mean could mean two different things. It could mean, on the one hand, from all those who taught me, I became smart, I learned, which is how Ben Zoma, right, wants to use the verse. But the actual meaning of the verse, if you look in the context, it's not from my teachers I became smart, but it's better than, more than, right? From in the sense of they're over there and I'm over here, higher level. And indeed, the original context meant, as it's translated, I have gained more insight than all my teachers, right? God, how I love your teaching. It is my study all day long. Your commandments make me wiser than my enemies. I have gained more insight than all my teachers. So I want you to think about what's happening here. The original context of the verse is, I am smarter than my teachers, from my teachers. I'm higher from my teachers, than my teachers. But that's not how Ben Zoma uses it. So here's the question we have to ask ourselves. Is he allowed to do this? Is he allowed to take a verse from the Bible, quote it, and use it in a different context than it was originally said? Now, is he doing something wrong with the verse? You could make a case that his interpretation is a legitimate one, but it's clear, and it would be clear even to him, that it's not the original meaning of the verse. Okay? So how do we justify this? Well, you could say that he's got a bunch of lazy students, and he might know the original context, but he's going to fool everybody else. He's going to simply say, Mikom lamdai hiskalti, in Psalms 119, verse 99, I've got a proof of my thing. And we're going to believe him, and we're not going to check, and he's going to get away with it. That's one possibility. We don't really want to think that Ben Zoma was trying to pull the wool over our eyes and quoting something that he's really changing what it originally meant. What's another possibility? Well, another possibility, we often refer to the Bible as being a sacred, holy text that takes on many, many different meanings. In fact, one of the expressions that the rabbis use is shivim panim la Torah, that the Torah has 70 faces. In other words, a verse can mean more than one thing. And yes, it's possible to take a verse out of its original context and use it to mean something entirely different than the way it was originally said, or perhaps it was intended. That's considered kosher. You can do that. How can you do that? You can do that because the Torah it can be understood on different levels. It can be understood in its contextual meaning. It can be taken out of its contextual meaning and given another meaning. That's how sacred and flexible it is. And that flexibility in the text is one of the great things of the Torah, that we're able to reinterpret it at times and change the meaning of it. We haven't changed what the words mean. We've just changed the context. Okay? Ben Zoma says, if I'm able to learn from anybody, that's a symbol of how smart I am. And whereas the book of Psalms, it was, I am so devoted to learning that I've surpassed my teachers. Okay, and so this different nuance in the meaning of the verse and the use of the verse becomes something that's part of rabbinic literature. Just one last comment about this concept. Ezehu hacham halomed mikol adam. I think parents in this generation have learned that, you know what, it used to be that people who were younger than you, especially children, would go to their elders to learn everything. But we're living at a time when sometimes the elders need to go to their kids to figure things out. I mean, the classic example is computer, right? How stereotypical is it that in so many cases, a parent goes to a kid and help me figure out, how do you do this on the computer? Now, for an adult to say, I've got nothing to learn from a child, and to even admit that he knows more than I and to ask for help is to put myself down. Ben Zoma is saying, then you're a fool. That ultimately, if you're smart, you're going to learn from anybody and everybody, not just from a college professor, but even from somebody who knows less than you in so many other realms. But in one particular area, they have expertise that you don't have. If you're not willing to be open, you're a fool. If you are, and you're willing to demean yourself in a sense, and to open yourself up for being dissed, right, then you are really wise. You are truly wise. So that's the first statement. Second statement, second question that he asks is, Ezehu Gibor? Who is a Gibor? In Hebrew or Yiddish, sometimes they use the word Gibor. They say Shimshon HaGibor, right? Samson, the mighty one, the strong one. Because of his long hair, he had power that nobody else had. So the question is, who is a Gibor? Who is strong? And our answer, the expected answer, is somebody with big muscles. Somebody who can press, lift barbells, 200, 300 pounds. Somebody who can beat up anybody in the world. Well, that person, that's what we consider mighty, strong. But once again, Ben Zoma is going to have a different answer, one that we didn't expect. And his answer is Hakovesh et Yitzro. Somebody who conquers. The word kovesh is literally conquer, which would seem to fall into the category of the mighty one, a gibor. It is Hakovesh conquers what? Kovesh et Yitzro. Yetzer. Yetzer refers to their impulses. Okay, we often speak of a person having two impulses. Yetzer hara, the evil impulse. You see something, you want to grab it, and you want to follow the selfish aspect, right? Take whatever you want. And then we also have the Yetzer HaTov, our selfless impulse. You imagine the two in the cartoon, the two little people on your shoulder, the devil whispering in this ear, the angel whispering in this ear. The devil telling you, go, do it, take, it's yours. What are you worried about? That's the Yetzer Hara. This guy, the angel whispering, be nice, share, right? All of those things, that's the Yetzer HaTov. And when we simply say Yetzer, the impulse, the implication is we're talking about the evil impulse, the impulse to be towards selfishness. So who is the Gibor? Not the hero, not the one with the big muscles, but one who is able to conquer the evil impulse. It's not about outward strength, it's about inner control. Okay? Not the answer we would have expected. And once again, Ben Zoma is going to give us a proof text, and the proof text is the book of Proverbs, Mishlei, chapter 16, verse 32. Now, Proverbs is mostly a book of one-liners. There's a lot that's in addition to that, but a good portion of the book of Proverbs are just these one-liners, and they are, in a sense, wisdom literature, telling you a one-line proverb, something that you could memorize and always have at the tip of your tongue that would teach you, some important lesson. So here in Proverbs 16:32, we read a one-liner that there's no context here. It's just one proverb after the other. And verse 32 says, Tov, good, Erech Apayim, patience, is Tov, is gooder or better, mi gibor, than mighty. And Moshel Barucho, somebody who can control his spirit, Miloched Ir, is better than somebody who could conquer a city. So here, what Ben Zoma has done is he's giving us a proverb, quoting from the book, and here it's pretty much exactly in context. Here he hasn't changed anything. The Torah, the Bible, says that better a person who can conquer their spirit than somebody who could conquer a city, right? And one who is patient, who is slow to anger, is better than the mighty. So if you want to know, I need to go to the gym in order to work out, in order to become strong, okay, that's important. But there's a greater strength, and that's internal strength. It's not the physical, it's the moral strength. And so that's what Ben Zoma tells us about the Gibor. So now we come to the third issue, Ezehu Ashir, who is rich? And once again, we know the answer. Who's rich? Well, we would assume you got a lot of money in the bank. Whether you need to have assets of $1 million, whatever the figure is, whatever the bar that makes you a rich person, having gone from poor to middle class to upper class, right? That's the definition. So it's about money in the bank, or it's about the kind of home and the neighborhood you live in, the kind of car that you drive, the vacations that you take, right? All of those are our definition of to be ashir, to be rich. But once again, Ben Zoma is going to give us a different answer. And so he says the following, and this is one of the great teachings of the Mishnah, the Talmud, of the Jewish tradition. Ezehu Ashir, who's wealthy, who's rich, Hasameach Bechelko. Sameach Simcha, somebody who is happy with his chelko, his chelek, his portion. Think about that. You can be a billionaire and you can be miserable. And if that's the case, then you're not really rich. Rich is defined as being happy with what you got. So in other words, there could be somebody who is actually, from a financial point of view, is poor. But that person, if he's content, if he's happy with what he's got, that person we consider rich. Okay, where do we get this from? Here, Ben Zoma is going to quote another verse. This time it's also back in the book of Psalms. This time it's Psalm number 128. And he tells us the following. First line in this psalm is, "Happy are all who fear the Lord. You shall enjoy the fruit of your labors. Yegia kapecha," literally the labor of your hands, what you and your hands have accomplished and have worked on and have planted, have built. Kitochel, if you will enjoy, you will eat that which your hands have done. Ashrecha, you will be fortunate, happy, blessed. Ashrecha, same word as ashrei, ashrei u'shvei v'techa. Happy are those who sit in God's house. Ashrecha, you will be happy if you can enjoy what your hands have done. V'tovlach, and you will have goodness. And the notion is, I think what's behind the choosing of this verse is the idea that how much can a person really accomplish with their two hands? We're not talking about a wheeler dealer who picks up the phone, makes deals, $1 million here, $500 million there. We're not talking about that. We're talking about somebody who, in their garage, saws a piece of wood, hammers two pieces of wood together, creates something. A farmer who goes out, who digs the soil, plants the seed, who waters the crop, who eventually harvests it. In other words, it's a finite kind of thing, but you've done it physically with your own two hands. Such a person, right? You're not going to have a tremendous amount, one person, two hands by yourself, but that person, a farmer who is able to eat the tomato that he planted and he raised and he harvested, it's a much sweeter thing, and there's a great sense of joy and contentment. Look what I've done. Look what my hands have accomplished. So that's ultimately what Ben Zoma is teaching us. And then somebody, whether it was Ben Zoma or maybe the editor of Pirkei Avot, says, the verse that you quoted, which said, the labor of your hands, you'll eat from the labor of your hands. Ashrecha, you'll be happy, v'tovlach, and you will have goodness. Now, we might say, why do you need those two phrases, ashrecha and tovlach? They're basically synonyms. They say the same thing. You'll be happy and you'll have good. But to the rabbis, no, if the book of Psalms uses two words, it must refer to two different things. It's not just repeating the same idea using a different word for variety. Okay? Each word must have its own special meaning. So, ashrecha, you'll be happy, ba'olam hazeh, in this world. V'tovlach, and it will be good for you, le'olam haba, in the world to come. So here we have sort of the rabbis giving their own advertisement that there's two worlds. We live in this world and we look forward to the world to come. And you can have good things happen in this world. How much the more so will you have good things happen to you in the world to come? Okay, so that's the third of the four questions. Now we come to the last one. Ezehu mechubad. Who is the person who is honored? Mechubad, from the word kuved, kabed, honored. Okay, kabed et avicha v'enimecha, honor your mother and your father. In Yiddish, kuved, meaning an honor that somebody might receive. Ezehu mechubad, who is the one who is honored? And again, our sense, given our world, is that the person who gets the testimonial dinner, the person who has all the plaques to show how beloved he is, and all the people who think the world of him. It's somebody who has fame and fortune. That's what we would think. But of course, Ben Zoma has a different answer, right? And we think the one who is honored is that you've got all those people on Facebook who like you. Right? You've you can say, I've got all these people who think, they show me honor. They think that I'm wonderful. His answer is not what we would have expected. His answer is, who is honored? Hamechabed et habriot. It's those who honor others. Okay, don't worry about other people. You think honor means a lot of people look up to you. To be honored, truly honored, is to be a person who honors others. Okay, a person who goes out of his way to praise people, to tell people who are in need of a pat on the back or a smile or a friendship, right? You're doing okay. You're not alone. People care about you. That's the person who ultimately will be honored. Not because you're the richest guy or the strongest guy, or your team won the World Series, or you won this trophy or that cup, right? That's not what life is about. That you're honored if you show kuvod and honor to others. And that's the way people will remember you and care about you. And once again, here he brings us a verse, and the proof verse, Shene'emar, as it says, Ki mechabdai achabed uvozei yekalu. So here, the proof text is in the book of Samuel, first book of Samuel, chapter 2, verse 30. And what we find is that we're dealing, this is before the time of Samuel the prophet. Samuel the prophet, remember, is the one who anoints King Saul and later King David. So if you imagine Moses maybe is 1200, we're now probably in the 1100s, okay, BCE. And before Samuel, the leader of the Jewish people was somebody known as Eli. We would call him Eli, but the Hebrew the Hebrew name is Eli. And we're told Eli was very old, and he was really the in charge of the sanctuary and the leader of the Jewish people. He had two sons who were no damn good. And as he got older, they sort of took over, and they used their position of power to extort gifts and sexual favors from people, and God was not pleased. So we're told a man of God came to Eli and said to him, and then brings this message. And basically, right, he says, assuredly declares the Lord, the God of Israel, I intended for you and your father's house to remain in my service forever. In other words, you, your children, their children. But now, declares the Lord, far be it from me. Forget about it. For I honor those who honor me. God says, you and your children have not shown kuvod, proper respect to me, in the way that they've taken advantage of their position. Okay? For I, God, honor those who honor me, God. But those who spurn me shall be dishonored. Right? And for what your sons have done, they will be punished. And indeed, not too long after this, the Philistines come in, and the sons of Eli are killed, and Eli himself dies when he hears the news, and the ark with the tablets, 10 Commandments, is captured by the Philistines and taken away for a number of years. So the original context was, the verse said, Ki mechabdai achabed. Those who honor me, I will honor. And the assumption is we're talking about God. But as Ben Zoma takes the verse and sort of turns it around, what he's saying is the following. that if originally was about God, is now about people and other people. But Ben Zoma has taken the verse, used it for his own purpose to teach a moral lesson. So again, in this beautiful, magnificent Mishnah, 4 questions: who is wise? Anybody who is willing to learn from everybody. Number 2, who is strong? If you can control yourself. Number 3, who is rich? Somebody who's happy with what they have. Number 4, who is honored? Somebody who honors other people. So phenomenal, beautiful. But there's something at the same time that we need to take a step back and see what's going on. In a sense, what Ben Zoma is not saying, but which is right here, is the idea that rabbinic literature, Judaism, is counter-cultural. We have a sense, whether it's Western culture or even, the Jewish world of the first century, we have a sense that people have a notion of this is what is. This is what we believe. This is what everybody believes. This is, accepted. Along comes Ben Zoma, along come the rabbis, along come rabbinic literature, along comes Judaism, and says, no, we don't believe what everybody else thinks. What everybody else thinks, what everybody else believes, what everybody else holds is obvious, is basic. We take a different stand. I want you to think about this, that ultimately one of the things that the prophets are doing, every Shabbos, we read Haftorah from the prophets. And one of the things that the prophets are doing week in, week out, is bringing us a countercultural message. Everybody believes this, we don't. We think that's wrong. We've got a different set of standards. We've got a different set of values. And it conflicts with what everybody else thinks and what everybody else does. The person who's got the 4.0, right, in their transcript may not be the smartest person. The person who can, punch somebody out with one punch and knock out their lights, or somebody who's got, several $1 million in their portfolio, or somebody who is, who's got all the kavod and the honor in the world, and everybody is looking up to them. We don't necessarily believe that, right? We have a different set of what's important to us. And so here's the problem. What do you do in our community when the highest standards include, well, you got to play soccer, and you got to be in Little League, and you got to be on the travel team. And that's really what counts in life, right? And your team winning. That's what our culture in this area tells us is the highest value. Judaism would say it's nice, not a bad way to spend your leisure time, but that's not the highest value, okay? You're not going to end up playing for a Division I NCAA football team with a full scholarship, and you're not going to make it to the NFL and get a $30 million a year contract. So stop kidding yourself, right? And instead of kidding yourself and assuming that soccer or other such things are the highest value in our community, maybe the sense of being a mensch, maybe that's the highest value. And so, even if that is not going to get you necessarily a scholarship to an Ivy League school, that's what Jewish people believe is important, or at least that's what Ben Zoma believes is important. And the question is, which set of values are we going to follow? Right? What the culture says, or counterculturally, what our tradition says. That's the challenge for us. Okay, so that's Mishnah number 1. Mishnah number 2, chapter 4, we see Ben Azai Omer. And here's another case of another guy with known first name, who's known simply as the son of his father and doesn't have the title rabbi. And indeed, Ben Azai, we know, was also another Shimon. So we had Shimon ben Zoma, we have Shimon ben Azai. We call the first guy Ben Zoma, we call the second guy just Ben Azai. And this is what he's telling us. Have a ratz, you should always run. La mitzvah kala, to do a light mitzvah, a minor mitzvah, kivachamura, just like you would run to do a major one, a serious one, right? And at the same time, uvoreach min ha'avera. You need to run to do a minor commandment, and you need to flee from an avera, from a transgression, a sin. By the way, those two verbs are interesting. The fact that you have to run to do a minor commandment seems to say it's not like it's in front of you, it's right there, just pick it up and do it. It's almost like it's over there, it's trying to get away from you. It's easy to let a minor commandment get away from you. You want to get it, you've got to run after it. You've got to jump on it. You've got to tackle it. You've got to pursue it. It's trying to get away from you. It's not up close. People say, well, I'm going to deal with what's important, what's in front of me, what I need to do. And here we're being told, no, you need to run after the minor things that people too often ignore, forget about, say it's not so important. Run, find it, get it, do it. And then the other verb on the flip side of the coin is boreach, you need to flee from a sin. Well, if the mitzvah is running away and you have to run to chase it, to grab it, then we're also being told that, on the other hand, the sin is pursuing you. And so to get away from a sin, you've got to flee, right? It's not like it's here, it's in front of you, and it's inert, and you can say, nah, I'm not going to go there. It's chasing you. It's looking to tackle you. Right? And if you want to get away from it, you got to run from it, flee from it. So it's fascinating, isn't that the way life is, unfortunately, that the good things, you need to pursue them and run and grab them and catch up to them. Whereas the bad stuff, it's going to find you, okay? It's going to trouble, doesn't need to look too far. It knows exactly where you are, and it's coming after you. And then he tells us, Ben Azai says, She mitzvah goreret mitzvah. One mitzvah leads to another. Here the translation is, it leads to another, it generates another. Okay, that if you get into the habit of doing a mitzvah, it will lead you to another mitzvah. That's the way that kind of world is. Do one and another one will pop up. The more you become habituated to living a life of mitzvot, more and more are going to find you, right? But again, initially you're going to have to chase it, run after it. If you get it, then one will lead to another. Okay, it's not like I did one, never have to do another one. One will lead you to another. Maybe you give tzedakah and then you feel good about yourself. It's not like, well, that's it, I'm done, I'm finished, I did my good deed. You know what? If you've got that kind of heart and you helped one person, and then all of a sudden you're going to see somebody else who maybe is in worse shape than the first one, and you're going to say to yourself, I gave to him, how can I not give to her? Or maybe the first person you gave to is going to give your name as a recommendation. You know what? When I was in trouble, I went to him. He was kind, he was generous. Why don't you give him a call? Check him out. And all of a sudden there's this network, and they're going to now come to you. And could you say, well, I don't want to be bothered? A lot of us do. But maybe what's happening is once you live that kind of life, you know, we've got people who collect food for the hungry. And then you read about there's a hurricane in Puerto Rico and people don't have what to eat. And then you read about something terrible that, you know, there's a tornado in the Midwest and people lost everything. And pretty much you say, I've got to help. I got to do something. I got to collect. I've got to send a check. I've got to, you know, do. And then even now, so many people are out of work, and we find out there are people who don't have income and people who can't afford groceries. And if you're, you know, human and you've got a beating heart and a caring soul, one mitzvah will lead to another. And then we're told there's a flip side. The Aveira goreret Aveira. But one transgression leads to another. You hang around with the wrong people, right? Even you figure it's a one-off thing. I do this one bad thing. But if you're hanging around the wrong people, other people are going to now come and try to take advantage of you, try to entice you, try to seduce you, try to, you know, to get you to do things that are wrong. So the kind of lifestyle that you live, you know, in a sense, we're creatures of habit. Do a good deed, another good deed, you know, is the next step. You do one bad thing and it leads to another bad thing. Sometimes it's covering up. Sometimes this guy tells his friend, oh, you know, he bought drugs from me. Maybe you want to offer him, you know, he's got money and he's got the, you know, the taste. Why don't you go check him out? And pretty much one thing will lead to the next. And then we're told, Sechar mitzvah, what is the reward of a mitzvah? Now, we would think, what does culture tell us? What's the expectation? If you do a mitzvah, God puts it in your book, gives you a check mark on Rosh Hashanah, opens the book, checks you out. You know what? You've got another year of life. Or when your life ends, you're going to heaven, right? We think that that's what the reward is. That's how we think about it, that you do, you get. Ben Azai is countercultural. He's telling us something different than what we would have expected. He says the following, that the reward of doing a mitzvah is another mitzvah. That you do it for its own sake, not because God's going to give you something good or, on the other hand, punish you, right? Don't do a mitzvah, and we've already seen this in the first chapter. Don't be like servants who say, I'm following the will of the master because of the reward. Right? We saw that at the very beginning of Pirkei Avot. And here we see a couple of 100 years later, Ben Azai is saying the same thing, but in different words. Sechar mitzvah mitzvah. The reward of a mitzvah is the mitzvah itself or the opportunity to do another mitzvah. And Sechar Aveira And the reward, you know what the reward of a transgression is, right? You'll feel good, you'll make a little quick money, whatever. No, it's going to be one more terrible thing. Let's do one more Mishnah. Huaya Omer. This is still Ben Azai. Al tehi vaz. Do not disdain l'chol adam. Do not disdain any person. Va'al tehi maflig l'chol davar. And do not underrate the importance of anything. She'ein lecha adam, for there is no person, she'ein lo sha'a, who does not have his hour. Ve'ein lecha davar, and there is no person, there is no thing, she'ein lo makom, without its place. Or here they say, no thing without its place in the sun. Often we go through life and we look at people around us and we say, you know what, they're not as smart, they're not in our class, they're not as good looking, they're not as clever, they're not as popular. What do I need them for, right? High school, middle school is traditionally about everybody going into their own cliques and everybody assuming, you know, they're no good, they're beneath me. And Ben Azai is saying, don't put people down, because there's going to come a moment when that person who you didn't think was so popular, so smart, so whatever, they're going to shine. They're going to have their moment, right? And so you need to respect people. There's a hidden aspect to everybody that's wonderful. What you need to do is not to disdain them, but to try to find that part of them which you can learn from, benefit from, which you can bask in them. And same thing with ein lecha davar, a thing that has, you would think, no purpose whatsoever. There's a wonderful midrash that talks about mosquitoes and David, slapping the mosquito, and why, God, did you invent these things? For what purpose? What could possibly be anything positive that could come out of such a creature as this? And ultimately, what David, according to the rabbis in the midrash, tell us, and what we're beginning to learn, I think, in our lifetimes, is that you get rid of one small, insignificant creature in nature, a gnat, a mosquito, a bee, right? And we don't realize that everything is, in a sense, interconnected. So look what's happening in the world if we get rid of one particular creature, which is critical for another creature to exist. So without the first one, the second one is gone, and there's a chain. And then ultimately, the world we live in is much poorer for it. Or maybe there are things that can be derived from insects, from bugs, which may be the source of healing, of medicine, of something wonderful and great. So Ben Azai says, don't be so quick to put down. The world was created in such a way that everything has significance and meaning and purpose. And instead of, dismissing it, try to figure out what could that purpose possibly be. So we'll see you next time, and look forward to davening with you tonight at 8:30.